What's up, fight fans? Today we're diving deep into the octagon to break down the most legendary fighters in UFC history. We're talking about the absolute savages who didn't just win fights. They rewrote the rulebook on what it means to be a complete mixed martial artist. From submission wizards to knockout artists, from trash-talking phenoms to silent assassins, these are the fighters who turned the UFC from a niche tournament into the global phenomenon it is today. If you're ready to learn what separates the legends from the pretenders, smash that subscribe button, because we're about to break down every fighting style, every signature move, and every moment that made these warriors immortal. Let's get into it. Let's start with the most controversial GOAT candidate in UFC history. Jon Jones didn't just dominate light heavyweight. He made it look like he was playing a different sport entirely. Jones burst onto the scene in 2008, looking like a scarecrow with an 84-inch reach. Nobody expected this lanky kid from upstate New York to become the youngest champion in UFC history at 23. But here's what separated Jones from every other prospect. His fight IQ was off the charts from day one. His style: pure chaos wrapped in calculated precision. Jones would throw spinning elbows from angles that shouldn't exist, land oblique kicks that made opponents question their career choices, and transition from striking to wrestling, like he was switching TV channels. The guy had this supernatural ability to adapt mid-fight and find ways to break you that you didn't even know existed. Take the Shogun Rua fight in 2011. Shogun was a legend, a former Pride champion who'd been breaking legs and ending careers for over a decade. Jones didn't just beat him. He dismantled him with a combination of ground and pound, elbows, and pure athletic dominance that made it look like a grown man fighting a teenager. Except Jones was the teenager. The Daniel Cormier rivalry showed us peak Jones. 2 fights, 2 different masterclasses. The first fight was pure wrestling and clinch work, Jones using his length to neutralize DC's Olympic-level wrestling and land those brutal elbows in the clinch. The second fight? That head kick knockout was poetry in motion. Jones set it up with low kicks all night, got DC thinking low, then went upstairs with a technique so clean it looked choreographed. If Jon Jones was calculated chaos, Anderson Silva was pure artistry. The Spider didn't just fight, he performed. For 7 years, Silva turned the octagon into his personal art gallery, painting masterpieces with his fists and feet. Silva's style was built on one simple concept: make them miss, make them pay. His striking was so fluid, so effortless, that it looked like he was moving in slow motion while everyone else was stuck in quicksand. That lean back, hands down, chin up stance should have gotten him knocked out 100 times. Instead, it made him untouchable. The Chael Sonnen fight in 2010 showed us Silva's heart. For 4.5 rounds, Sonnen dominated him on the ground, talking trash and landing ground and pound. Silva looked finished. Then, with less than 2 minutes left in the fight, he pulled off one of the greatest comebacks in UFC history. Triangle choke. Fight over. That's not just skill. That's the heart of a true champion. Before the UFC became the undisputed king of MMA, there was Pride fighting championships in Japan. And the king of Pride was a quiet, unassuming Russian heavyweight who fought with the expression of a man doing his taxes. Fedor Emelianenko might be the most complete mixed martial artist who ever lived. The Mirko Cro Cop Filipovic fight in 2005 was peak Fedor. Cro Cop was arguably the best striker in heavyweight MMA at the time, with a left high kick that had ended careers. Fedor took him down, controlled him on the ground, and submitted him with a rear naked choke. It wasn't just a win. It was a statement that technique beats power every single time. If you want to understand what it means to be a complete mixed martial artist, study Georges St-Pierre. GSP didn't just win fights. He solved them like mathematical equations. His approach to MMA was so systematic, so perfectly executed, that he turned championship fights into technical clinics. His jab was a thing of beauty. GSP would pump that jab all night, setting up everything else in his arsenal. It wasn't just about landing the punch. It was about controlling distance, disrupting timing, and setting up his takedowns. The way he'd feint the jab, then shoot for a double leg, was so smooth that opponents knew it was coming, but couldn't stop it. The comeback against Michael Bisping in 2017 proved that GSP's skills were timeless. After 4 years away from the sport, he moved up to middleweight and submitted a champion who was in his prime. That rear naked choke wasn't just about technique. It was about a master craftsman showing that true skill doesn't fade. Khabib Nurmagomedov retired undefeated at 29-0. And if you watched his fights, you understand why nobody could figure out how to beat him. His style was suffocating, relentless, and absolutely demoralizing for opponents. Khabib didn't just win fights. He broke people's will to compete. The foundation of Khabib's game was his wrestling, but calling him just a wrestler is like calling Picasso just a painter. His takedowns were varied and unpredictable. He could shoot doubles, singles, trips, throws, whatever the situation required. But the real magic happened once he got you down. At 5 feet 3 inches and 125 pounds, Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson proved that size doesn't determine greatness. DJ's flyweight title reign was a masterclass in technical perfection, fight IQ, and pure athletic ability. He defended his title 11 consecutive times, and each defense was a clinic in mixed martial arts excellence. The Ray Borg fight showed us peak DJ. That suplex into an armbar was one of the most spectacular finishes in UFC history. It wasn't just athletic ability, it was perfect technique, executed under pressure against elite competition. The way he lifted Borg, adjusted midair, and immediately transitioned to the submission was pure artistry. Before the UFC was mainstream, before it was on ESPN, there was Chuck Liddell. The Iceman was the face of the UFC during its early growth, and his knockout power made him a household name. Chuck's style was simple, but devastatingly effective. Keep the fight standing and put people to sleep. The Tito-Ortiz rivalry defined an era. 2 fights, 2 knockouts, and a friendship that turned into one of the most personal feuds in UFC history. Chuck's knockout of Tito in their first fight was the moment the UFC truly went mainstream. That overhand right, heard round the world, put the sport on the map. Before we talk about modern legends, we have to pay respect to the man who started it all. Royce Gracie didn't just win the first UFC tournament, he changed the entire landscape of martial arts forever. At 170 pounds soaking wet, Royce proved that technique beats size, strength, and aggression every single time. UFC 1 was a revelation. Royce submitted Art Jimerson, a professional boxer, with a rear naked choke. He tapped out Ken Shamrock, one of the most feared fighters in the world, with a rear naked choke. In the finals, he choked out Gerard Gordeau, a kickboxer who had been destroying opponents all night. DC might be the most well-rounded fighter in UFC history. Daniel Cormier was an Olympic wrestler who developed world-class striking, elite-level cardio, and the heart of a true champion. His career was defined by excellence in 2 weight classes and some of the most emotional moments in UFC history. His heavyweight run was legendary, moving up in weight at age 39 and knocking out Stipe Miocic to win the title was one of the greatest achievements in UFC history. The emotion after that knockout, the tears, the realization that he had finally reached the mountaintop. It was pure human drama. Love him or hate him, Conor McGregor changed the UFC forever. His rise from welfare to superstardom is the stuff of legend, and his impact on the sport goes far beyond his fighting ability. McGregor proved that charisma and marketing savvy could be just as valuable as technical skills. The Jose Aldo knockout was the moment McGregor became a superstar. 13 seconds, one left hand, the end of a legendary champion's reign, and the birth of a new era. That knockout was so perfect, so precisely timed, that it looked choreographed. Amanda Nunes is the greatest female fighter in MMA history, and it's not even close. The Brazilian powerhouse held titles in 2 weight classes simultaneously and defeated every legend the sport had to offer. Her combination of power, technique, and killer instinct was unmatched. The Chris Cyborg knockout was her masterpiece. Cyborg was considered the most feared woman in MMA, a knockout artist who had been destroying opponents for over a decade. Nunes knocked her out in the first round, proving that she was the undisputed queen of women's MMA. Stipe Miocic proved that nice guys can finish first. The Cleveland firefighter became the greatest heavyweight champion in UFC history through hard work, technical excellence, and an unbreakable will to win. His title reign was defined by victories over legends and a fighting style that was both effective and entertaining. The Francis Ngannou fights told the story of Miocic's career. The first fight was a masterclass in game planning and execution. Ngannou was the scariest knockout artist in the division, but Miocic neutralized his power with wrestling and cardio, then broke him down over 5 rounds. These legends didn't just win fights, they pushed the sport forward. Each one brought something unique to the octagon, whether it was technical innovation, mental warfare, or pure athletic ability. They proved that there's no single path to greatness in MMA. What makes these fighters legendary isn't just their records or their highlight reels. It's the way they approach the sport, the standards they set, and the impact they had on everyone who came after them. They turned mixed martial arts from a spectacle into a legitimate sport, and their influence can be seen in every fighter who steps into the octagon today. The beauty of MMA is that it's constantly evolving. Today's prospects are studying these legends, learning from their techniques, and finding new ways to push the boundaries of what's possible in combat sports. The next generation of legends is already in the gym, grinding, preparing to write their own chapters in UFC history. But these fighters, Jones, Silva, Fedor, GSP, Khabib, DJ, Chuck, Royce, DC, Conor, Nunes, and Stipe, they're the foundation. They're the reason we have the sport we love today. They're the legends who proved that with enough skill, heart, and determination, anything is possible inside that octagon. We can't forget about BJ Penn, the prodigy from Hawaii, who became the first fighter to win titles in 2 different weight classes. His jiu-jitsu was otherworldly, and his heart was unbreakable. Matt Hughes, the farm boy from Illinois, who dominated welterweight with his wrestling and ground and pound. That slam knockout of Frank Trigg is still one of the most spectacular finishes in UFC history. Tito Ortiz, the Huntington Beach bad boy, who brought personality and showmanship to the UFC, while backing it up with devastating ground and pound and elite wrestling. Ken Shamrock, the world's most dangerous man, who helped legitimize the sport in its early days with his submission skills and legitimate tough guy credentials. Frank Mir, the heavyweight submission specialist, who proved that big men could be technical grapplers. His Kimura break of Tim Sylvia's arm is still hard to watch. Wanderlei Silva, the axe murderer, whose aggressive Muay Thai style and killer instinct made him a fan favorite and one of the most feared middleweights ever. Quinton Rampage Jackson, whose combination of wrestling, boxing, and raw power made him one of the most entertaining fighters to watch. His personality outside the cage was just as explosive as his fighting style. Lyoto, the Dragon Machida, who brought traditional karate to MMA and proved that unorthodox striking styles could work at the highest level. His elusive movement and counter-striking were beautiful to watch. Mauricio Shogun Rua, the Brazilian legend who dominated both Pride and the UFC with his devastating Muay Thai and submission skills. His wars with Ricardo Arona and Chuck Liddell are classics. Jose Aldo, the featherweight king whose leg kicks were weapons of mass destruction. His 7-year unbeaten streak and technical brilliance made him one of the greatest champions ever. What separated these legends from regular fighters wasn't just natural talent. It was their approach to training, preparation, and constant improvement. Each one revolutionized how fighters prepare for competition. The mental side of fighting became just as important as the physical. These legends understood that MMA was as much about strategy and adaptation as it was about technique and conditioning. The evolution of training methods, nutrition science, and recovery techniques allowed these fighters to compete at levels that previous generations couldn't imagine. They were athletes first, fighters second. These legends didn't just compete. They built the foundation for a global sport that now generates billions in revenue and attracts the world's best athletes. Their influence extends far beyond their individual careers. Walk into any MMA gym today, and you'll see techniques, training methods, and philosophies that these legends pioneered. Their innovations became standard practice for the next generation. The sport's global expansion can be traced directly to the excitement and legitimacy these fighters brought to the octagon. They proved that MMA was more than just a spectacle. It was the ultimate test of martial arts skill. The current generation of fighters stands on the shoulders of these legends. They're faster, stronger, more technical, and more well-rounded than ever before. But they all learned from studying the masters who came before them. New techniques are constantly being developed, new training methods are being discovered, and the sport continues to evolve. But the fundamental principles these legends established, technique, heart, intelligence, and dedication, remain unchanged. Technology is changing how fighters train and compete, but it's still about the same basic elements that made these legends great: skill, determination, and the will to be the best in the world. If you enjoyed this breakdown of MMA's greatest legends, make sure to subscribe for more fight breakdowns, technique analysis, and everything else you need to know about the world of mixed martial arts. These fighters changed the game forever, and their legacies will inspire fighters for generations to come. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest content, and let us know in the comments which legend you think had the biggest impact on the sport. Was it Royce Gracie revolutionizing martial arts? Anderson Silva's artistic striking? Khabib's suffocating wrestling? Or maybe Conor McGregor's transformation of the business side of fighting? Thanks for watching, and remember, in the octagon, legends aren't born. They're forged through blood, sweat, and an unbreakable will to be the best in the world. These fighters proved that with the right combination of skill, heart, and determination, ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. Whether you're a casual fan or a serious student of the sport, these legends have something to teach us all about excellence, perseverance, and the pursuit of greatness. Their stories remind us that champions aren't made in the octagon. They're made in the gym, day after day, rep after rep, always pushing to be better than they were yesterday.